Flowgear makes it easy to build, debug, and publish your own connectors in the .NET platform. Here's how that works. Create a new Visual Studio project of type class library. You're going to add a second project which will be a console application which acts as the test harness that is going to host the connector during development. I'm going to set my console app to be the startup project, and then I'll reference my class library, which is where my connector is going to live, from the console project. All of the assemblies need to be signed, so we're going to just quickly generate a key for this. And then it's time to install a couple of NuGet packages. In the Package Manager console, you can go Install Package, and there are two packages that we want. First of all, on the class library, which is where our connector will be, we want to install Flowgear.sdk. Second, on the test harness, which is going to host the class library or our connector, we want to install Flowgear.nodes.testHarness. Now I'm going to rename my class library to demo node, and it'll be a public class library. Now the first thing to do is to decorate this as a Flowgear node. So use the node attribute, which is contained in Flowgear.sdk. Provide a unique name for your node, a node type. For example, a connector would integrate with a third-party endpoint. A path to an image, I'm going to create one just now. And then choose where the connector is allowed to run from. I'm going to choose anywhere, which means that it's allowed to execute in cloud as well as at a drop point. Then the only required element of a Flowgear node is that it implements what we call the Invoke Property. This is going to be a public method which returns a type called Invoke result, and we normally call it Invoke. But the way that Flowgear understands this as the Invoke method is that we decorate it with an attribute called Invoke. And I'll return a new Invoke result which would indicate a successful operation. Now we can add a little bit of implementation to our node. I'm going to add a few properties which will show up on the design canvas. All our node will do is concat two words together. Anytime that you want a property, it needs to be tagged as public, and it needs to have public getters and setters. To denote that these are properties that should be exposed on the canvas, you need to tag them with the property attribute, which is also declared in Flowgear.sdk. Against that, you can specify the flow direction. In other words, is this an input or an output property? And then optionally provide an extended type as well. For example, should this present as an XML document, a multi-line, or a single-line document? I'm going to add a third property, which will be our output. And we'll tag it similarly, except that it's going to be an output property. Now to build the implementation for this node, all I'm going to do is assign combine to be word1 plus word2. I'll put a breakpoint at this point. Our node is just about ready to go. The next thing that we'll do is create a small image to act as its icon. This is going to be a 16 by 16 image, and I'll just make mine D for demo. I've added that PNG to the project, and the last thing I need to do is just specify that it's an embedded resource. Now to finish up, all I need to do is configure the test harness. Here I'm going to tell my app to attach the test harness. And I'll use console read key to make sure that this project stays open. Next up, make sure that Visual Studio is running as administrator and that you have a drop point running on the same machine that you're running Visual Studio. I'll run my project and go into a new workflow. Over here I can go add, use the third property on the right, and choose the drop point that my Visual Studio instance is running against. And you can see the design of the node has been put onto the screen. I can connect it up over here and provide some inputs, and then hit run to start this workflow executing. As you can see, it's actually broken into the code here, so this makes it very easy to debug. I'm happy with what I see, and so I can continue out of there back into the Flowgear console. From the activity log, I can inspect the execution of this node and see that the combined property was set correctly as I'd expected. Once you've completed the implementation for your node, zip up the release binaries and publish them into Flowgear using the nodes option in the menu on the Flowgear console.